Chapter 33: Mysterious Aspects of Happiness of Life in Existence. Introduction. Happiness of a person depends on his satisfaction. He feels happy when his desires are fully satisfied. He is happy when no more ambition is left in his mind. However, it is very rare to find a person who is really happy and fully satisfied, having no more desires in the depth of his mind. Everyone around us is mostly unsatisfied and unhappy. Unhappiness may be due to his health, wealth, profession, and concerning issues in a family. This may be because of children, spouse, parents, or parents in law. There can be a series of such issues that cause unhappiness for him in day to day living. For a common man, happiness is relative and it is always with respect to others. It is comparative, it is mutative, and it is time bound, age bound, and yuga or kal as well as generation bound. Happiness is time, space, and cause bound, and it is also governed by various defined and undefined parameters. Happiness is an abstract identity. It is desires bound. Under the influence of vasanas and inbuilt tendencies, it revolves around the outward actions or gimmicks for a common worldly human being to be happy in this existence. Happiness is mutative. From the above, it is clear that happiness is always transient. It is never permanent. One cannot say that he will be always happy if he is happy at this moment. Happiness is earthbound, and hence it is always in motion. It comes and goes. Happiness is a state of mind, but the mind is mutative. So happiness has to be mutative. It cannot be permanent. Happiness changes with time and age. A child can be happy with a toy, but to a young man, a toy cannot give happiness. And what makes a young man happy? For an old man, such happiness is miles away from that. Happiness is transient. Happiness is like a twinkling of a star. It is like a bubble that can burst in no time. But still, all of us are made to look for happiness. Our whole efforts are directed towards a point that might give us happiness. But that happiness vanishes like a bubble and becomes a void instantaneously. Where happiness has gone, dissolved, or disappeared, the mind does not know, but a mutative mind again puts its efforts to search for transient happiness. And this game of hide and seek goes on as long as the breath remains. Happiness is a function of breath. One executes all his actions through efforts. Indirectly, all human efforts are closely linked through the breath. Human efforts are continued till the breath is there and until breath lasts. All actions depend on breath, and when one achieves the desired results for his actions or efforts, he becomes breathless temporarily to be with the happiness of his success. Thus, he enjoys the results or outcome of happiness. It means the breathless state is the state of happiness. However, the breathless state is transient. No one can live without breathing. One again starts breathing with the lapse of time to live. Thus, happiness becomes transient, like a mist in life in due course. Happiness is temporary. In other words, in this mundane world, one cannot be permanently happy. Whatever he achieves, gets, even if he conquers the whole world, he cannot remain permanently in the state of happiness. Happiness is temporary. His happiness is temporary or transient. So far, there exists breath, and one cannot be breathless to live to be permanently happy. So, happiness is a mist, short lived, transitory, and temporary. Basically, happiness is time bound. Happiness revolves around center, less center. One can run for happiness, but happiness goes on shifting its center. What can make someone happy today? The same may not be a source of happiness tomorrow. One can go on revolving around happiness but cannot get it unless one gets dissolved in it, and one cannot permanently get dissolved till the breath exists. So, the permanence of happiness is a mysterious riddle that cannot be solved in this material world. One can go on accumulating every material thing or good of this world, but he cannot accumulate happiness, which is transient and abstract. It must be remembered that breath is God, that is, being. One cannot live without breath. Happiness is an instantaneous, breathless state. This state cannot be prolonged to exist in this world. Without breath and without being, there is no existence. So, happiness is transient and it cannot be made permanent unless one merges with the being. Categories of happiness. Happiness broadly can be divided into three broad categories: physical happiness, mental happiness, spiritual happiness. In other words, happiness is gross, subtle, and causal. The gross happiness is the happiness on the horizontal worldly plane. People look for different worldly goods and try to acquire them with full efforts to be happy. It may be a house, gold, diamonds, cars, other luxury items, and so on. Even after getting all material goods and comforts, one feels vacuumed inside. It gives transient satisfaction and fulfillment. After some time, he tries to get more of them, but he never gets satisfied with his desires for accumulation. This aspect may be extended to sex, power, money, and other worldly comforts. Temporary contentment. Temporarily, one gets contented. But again, after a lapse of a small interval, one feels deprived of contentment. His temptations increase and he looks to fulfill them, to be happy again and again. However, such a reservoir of happiness on the physical plane is never fully filled until and unless the mind is satisfied with the accumulation of modern comforts and their frequent replacements. In other words, unless and until mind develops the intrinsic unnecessity of undue accumulation of physical material items beyond certain limit, the mind cannot develop authority of detachment from the material goods. Role of mind. If the mind accumulates wisdom with age or with existing knowledge that the greatest personalities of the world have left as posterity, it can assist a person for his physical, mental, and spiritual satisfaction. One must know that the mind controls the senses. If a mind is made stronger from a lower to a higher level, only then some direction of hope can be given to enhance happiness. Role of developed greatest mind. At one stage, when the mind turns into the greatest mind through the accumulation of deeper wisdom, then he can command with awareness all the five senses, that is, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, that control him so as to transcend the desires of his senses by the accumulated wisdom. Thus, he gets happiness to become desireless in life. In a nutshell, the greatest mind only can help or assist to make a person to be happy by giving him positive direction. When the intellect of a person accumulates gradually this divine wisdom, then happiness does not remain in a folded mystery, but a person feels happy with whatever he has. It does not mean that he becomes idle. However, he works much more efficiently, but his actions are actionless and they are selfless to fulfill the commands of the being. They are not for his selfish gains, since his even essential desires become negligible or just are very limited. Then his all actions are for the being. Mathematical formulation for happiness. In a simple mathematical language, happiness can be defined as the number of desires fulfilled by the total number of desires. So, If the total number of desires is less, the man is happy, or if his most of the desires are fulfilled without an increase of the desires anymore, then also he is happy. But if desires are increasing and not getting fulfilled, his unhappiness and miseries will go on increasing. He becomes miserable with time. So, in short, the happy man is he whose total number of desires tends to be zero. It means the denominator in the mathematical equation of desires is zero, and then only his happiness is infinite. If so, then only he becomes a blessed soul. Desirelessness is godliness. In simple words, it can be said that the vairagya or detachment of a person can only make him intrinsically happy. In other words, man minus desires is God. It means a desireless man has internal happiness. He has transformed himself and accumulated all divine subtle virtues. He has become like God. Breath governs happiness. Under conditions of intrinsic detachment, his breath will be calm, tranquil, and the rate of breath will be less. He will be nearly in a breathless state. This makes him happy and blessed. He will be in close proximity of divinity. He becomes divine in nature, accumulating all subtle and divine qualities with time. Demarcation of different happiness. In general, physical happiness comes with the accumulation of material goods. Mental happiness comes with knowledge, and intellectual happiness one gets with wisdom. Each of this happiness can supersede another. Intellectual happiness can supersede mental, and mental happiness can supersede physical. And thus, higher happiness can control the lower level of happiness. Happiness is what you are intending. Basically, happiness is what one is looking for. If one is looking for wisdom, then wealth cannot make him happy, as Gautama Buddha was not happy with worldly pleasures and wealth. He wanted enlightenment so he could renounce all the worldly comforts to be happy and to become a blessed soul. Happiness is that which one is intending or looking for. Other gains have no meaning for him. The happiness one is looking or intending for can generate tranquil breath automatically in him after he achieves that happiness. Void is happiness. Basically, the breathing state gives happiness, and this cannot be achieved without inner evolution. By suspension of breath, one enters into void or in a vacuum state. It is the state of divine happiness, grades of happiness, and ultimate happiness. All these types of happiness, that is, intellectual, mental, and physical, are very mutative, and one can never be satisfied even if having the maximum or highest of all of them. One can be really happy when his happiness approaches a blessed state of Sat, Chit, Ananda. Unless happiness is converted or transformed into this state of Ananda or bliss state, he will be lingering in the horizontal worldly plane to seek some happiness or the other. The blessed state is only achieved happiness by the control of prana shakti. This is possible only by being breathless, that is, by controlling the breath and ascending the life force within him to the third eye location, and by converting this life force into the divine light. This is possible by the grace of Almighty. It means Mahashunya, state of the physical system, or void or breathless state, can only bring blessed state when happiness is totally transformed into bliss. In this stage, no desire is left. It is the deep secret of happiness of human life in existence. State of nothingness, a blessed state. A desireless man is near to God. Man minus or without desire is God. It is only possible by breath control. It is the state of single shunya. If it is coupled with prana control, then it is The state of second shunya, if it is accompanied with side gazing or drishti tratak on divine light, it becomes the state of third shunya. By achieving the state of these three shunyas, that is, in Mahashunya or nothingness state, one can be in contact with the cosmos. He can be with cosmic energy, and then only he is with the blessings of Cosmic Mother. Thus, he is in a complete blessed state, and he will be much happier than a person merely with the physical, mental, and intellectual happiness. Absolute happiness. Furthermore, absolute happiness lies in the mergence of the self with the supernal. All other grades of happiness are only relative and transient, and this is possible or achievable with the blessings of being. However, sincere efforts to achieve the grace of Almighty is only by His blessings, and these play a significant role in life. Manifestation of consciousness. Manifestation of consciousness is the prerequisite for intrinsic happiness. To be conscious, manifestation of consciousness, to step into being, to be beyond time and space, to be merged into the supernal, to be in a conscious-less state with discontinuities, being superconscious, all this brings blessed state with manifested consciousness, even when one is back to conscious state after getting merged in supernal. This is the ultimate happiness. Being in this state, one is Jivan Mukta or liberated soul. If one can get this state by Sahaj process, then he is Mahayogi, the blessed soul and the happiest individual in the world, just having nothing but possessing everything. Permanent happiness. Above is the state of permanent happiness. One can jump into this state as and when he wants if he becomes Jivan Mukta. Being temporary, it is a permanent state since it is Sahaja, or easily achievable for an advanced personality or liberated soul. In short, it can be concluded that happiness is transient and can be made permanent if transformed into the divine blessed state, being in the divine universe beyond time and space, and it is achieved by the grace of being. It is possible in a state of suspension of breath. However, this cannot be prolonged in the state of physical existence. So, happiness will be transient in the physical state. However, in this way, if one's awakening consciousness is manifested, then his health, happiness, wisdom, well being, and life longevity is enhanced by the accumulation of divine energy in his system. Thus, happiness becomes a stateless state of an individual, even if one having everything. He possesses nothing but his or being grace, which is all in all. Concluding remarks. The easiest way to be happy is to surrender to Almighty in all respects. One must perceive that God is the doer and He is just a non-doer identity. All success and failure is His. He is not involved. He is just an executor of divine commands. So, there's no question of His happiness or unhappiness. One must always experience this state of mind. This world shall be taken by him as his divine drama. He must consider himself as an actor of this huge universal drama, then he will always be happy. As his way of perceiving is modulated, he will transcend all happiness and unhappiness of this world. He will be liberated from all miseries. This is the key. To achieve this, one has to enter the abode of silence in this life. He has to pass through the bridge of breath so as to be with Almighty Force. In fact, breath control, mindfulness of breath, being with discontinuity of breath are the key to be happy in this mundane world. Then only the journey to the abode of silence will be blissful and pleasant. This is the only mysterious key of happiness of life in existence.